What are some of the things we do as part of an initial consultation? Part of what I sometimes call our cash flow optimization exercise. There are a few things that we do, and one of the most valuable is really just helping the client understand what you currently have. And you can send us all of your documents, give us all of your information. The more you give us, the more we can help you. We can review your insurance policies, car insurance, home insurance, health insurance, life insurance, disability, liability, even specialized business insurances, whatever you have. We'll take a look at that, help us understand what your cash flow situation is, your savings, your debt. We can look at all of that. And of course, you don't have to provide us with any more information than you're comfortable providing us, but the more you give us, the more we can help you. And there's a lot of nuggets that we can usually find in someone's existing financial situation. If you're open to providing us with some information and open to making some changes to help optimize your current situation. I'm not licensed to do all of these different things, but I have partners who do. So if you have investments, retirement accounts, send those to us as well. I have partners who are securities licensed who can look at those, and one of the great ways that they can help is not so much that they're going to give you brilliant investment ideas, although I hope they do, but more that we can now coordinate those investments with everything in your financial plan. And that is really the overarching theme here. Very few people have gotten all of their financial professionals together in a room, virtually or in person, to coordinate all the different things they're doing. They got their home and auto insurance over here, and maybe they got it from a state farm agent, or maybe they just went online and bought it. They've got their health insurance over here, which maybe they just got through an employer and they've never really looked at it. Maybe they have disability through their employer as well. They've never really looked at it. Then they've got their investments over here, which maybe they've got a financial advisor, maybe they don't. And they got their life insurance over here, not to mention your debt, your mortgage. Maybe you've got a home equity line of credit cards, car loans, student loans. All these different things are financial tools, and there's nobody who's really quarterbacking it or who's being the glue to tie all of these things together. And that's what I try to be, just by backing up and taking a big picture perspective and looking at everything comprehensively. Oftentimes, we can find some opportunities that are not visible when we look at each different component in isolation. Your investment guy might be doing a great job, but he's just looking at investments. He's not looking at other things in your financial life that could be potentially coordinated with investments. It's not that uncommon where something that makes sense when we look at just investments doesn't make sense when we zoom out and look at it big picture. There are a lot of different things that I've found for people as an example. Sometimes if you have a disability insurance policy, individually owned, there might be important exclusions on those policies. I've pointed out to clients how they had exclusions on their current policy where it excluded anything related to, let's say, their back, because maybe at the time they are recovering from a back injury. And now you don't have to get a new disability policy or anything. If your back is healed, you can go back and get that exclusion removed. That could have been a very rude awakening for a client who wasn't aware of that. Also, you might have a guaranteed purchase option. This could be true on disability insurance or life insurance. You can utilize that guaranteed purchase option rather than taking out a new policy. With existing life insurance, I explained to a client that the PUA rider he had on his whole life insurance policy allowed what's called unscheduled PUAs, which means additional payments in your life insurance policy. But those unscheduled PUAs can be restricted. His policy was set up so that he could, in theory, pay 10 times the amount of base premium into the PUAs. But in bold letters, the insurance company is telling him, we reserve the right to restrict that to 3 times and ask for proof of insurability. So your health could impact that. Would the insurance company do that? Probably not, but that's something the client didn't know. And he was surprised to find out that he did not have the guaranteed right to pay the full premium that had been illustrated. The insurance company could restrict that pretty significantly. And that obviously would impact the performance of his policy. Group benefits too. If you have benefits through your employer, we'll take a look at those contracts, and we would like to get the actual contractual language, not just the group benefits brochure. That's a good start, but oftentimes there are important caveats in those group policies, and oftentimes we can help to optimize it, and we can help you to make better use of what you already have. Sometimes there's health advocacy through your employer. Sometimes you can get estate planning through your employer. And of course, estate planning is another thing we can help with. If you have a will, a trust, financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney, guardianship, successors identified, any of these documents, we're happy to review them and give you our thoughts on them. Estate planning is oftentimes a gap in many people's financial plans. I'll just point out that estate planning is different from having a document. Having a will, having a trust, having these various documents is good, but that is not the same as actual estate planning, which is a planning process where thought goes into it, and those documents now reflect your wishes. And estate planning is not just about what happens after you die, it's also about what happens while you're alive. And there's an education process that's going through this whole way. It's a two-way street, right? I'm learning about you as a client. Well, this is before you become a client, but what's your current situation? And I'm educating you, not just in generalities, but on specific items in your situation that can be optimized. And it's very common for us to find some quick, easy wins, some great ways to optimize what you currently have. Another would be taxes. I'm not licensed to give tax advice, but I have partners who are. And we can take a look at what you're doing and see if there are some additional tax savings we can find, some additional tax optimization. And then when we go to make these moves, we can save potentially a lot of money. We can optimize your current situation in many ways. As an example, one client, we saved him probably at least $10,000 annually by making a combination of three moves, really. One was I introduced him to a PNC agent who saved him thousands of dollars on his car insurance. He had three teenage drivers at home, so he was paying significant amounts on car insurance. And we saved him thousands of dollars by switching him over. Obviously, I don't do that myself, but I have partners who do. We switched him from health insurance to crowd health. That also resulted in thousands of dollars of savings. Thankfully, his wife, and his three children were relatively healthy. They were with a small business, basically quasi self-employed. And so the health insurance they were getting was similar to what an individual could get on his own. And so by switching him over to crowd health, we saved him thousands of dollars. And then the last move was refinancing the mortgage into a first lien HELOC. Notice these are three things that have nothing to do with life insurance per se, which is what I do. I am licensed for life and health insurance, but I try to help people any way that I can before we can get to the life insurance discussion. Those are just a few examples of things that we can do. Recently helped a couple deduct $30,000 in income from their taxes by paying their children's salaries. So if you are a business owner, you can pay your children a salary, you can employ them in your business and deduct up to $15,000 a year per child as a business expense because you're paying them a salary. Your children are minors, so you, as the guardian of the children, can shepherd that money. It is the child's money, it is the child's salary, but you, as the guardian, are going to take care of it for them until you decide they're responsible enough to handle it. And as long as that money is used for the child's benefit, no problem. What we oftentimes will do is take that $15,000 in salary per child and pay it as a premium into whole life insurance policies on the children. Obviously, those policies are for the children's benefit, obviously, and you can use that as a savings account. This client is using those policies to save for college education for the children in the future. Another client I have right now is doing the same thing, except he has four children. So he's going to be able to deduct $60,000 from his income. And of course, we're working with the CPA. I'm not the one licensed to give tax advice. I'm helping with the life insurance policies, which are not necessary. You could pay your children a salary and deduct that from your income without also incorporating the life insurance. But this is just illustrating again the importance of having a comprehensive approach, where by tying these multiple components together, we get a great comprehensive overall strategy. If you just talk to your CPA and you just pay your child a $15,000 salary and keep it in a savings account for the child, that would be perfectly fine and that would accomplish the tax saving. By incorporating whole life insurance, we get so many other benefits as well. Now, not only is the salary tax free or tax deductible, but also all the earnings in the whole life insurance policy are not going to be taxed. And the distributions won't be taxed either, assuming we use policy loans and don't take surrenders. And then eventually that death benefit will pay out without being taxed. So these are just a few examples of ways that we can help clients. We can also optimize your bank account and credit card mix depending on how you're spending your money and where you're spending your money. And I'll just say this, a lot of how much we can help you depends on how much you help us. The more information you're sharing with us and the more organized you are with that information, the better we can dissect it, review it, and make good recommendations. And the more work you are willing to do, the more we can actually implement these recommendations. There are a lot of changes you could potentially make that might require some effort on your part. If you want to switch your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance over to Costco, as an example, some people have done that, where you can actually get your home and auto insurance through Costco. A lot of people don't know this, and you can save sometimes substantial amounts of money by doing that, but it does require work on your part. I don't work for Costco or in their home and auto insurance. It's actually through a partner. So you as the client would then have to go online, fill in your information, get a quote, go through the process of switching your policies over, which for me, if there's hundreds or thousands of dollars in savings, annual savings on the line, why would you not do that? But unfortunately, I've found that many people are simply not willing to do the work. There's two things involved. There's a bit of laziness and unwillingness to do the work. Some people are expecting me to just give them a magic silver bullet that's going to solve all their problems. If you don't have financial discipline, that's not really a problem I can solve. But I'm going to partner with you. So the more you partner with me, the more work you're willing to do, the better it's going to be. So there's the financial laziness, but there's also human respect. And by that, I mean basically following the crowd, human respect, where it's hard for people to get over the mental hurdle of doing something that's different from what their neighbors are doing. So some people homeschool their children. And there are some people who maybe would like to homeschool their children, but they just cannot get over the social opprobrium that comes with homeschooling. And they don't want to be perceived as being weird or anything like that. They keep sending their children to public or private schools. And yes, if you homeschool your children, there's some work involved. Certainly. I think those who do it successfully would say that in the long run, there's actually a lot less work in the long run, but it is more work in the short run. There is an adjustment in behavior for sure. But some people, I think, don't do it, not so much because they're afraid of the additional work, but they're afraid of social opprobrium. And people will go through a lot of effort in order to fit in order to follow the crowd. So in my experience, it is partly laziness, but there's a big component of human respect. Just wanting to follow the crowd, not wanting to do anything that's outside of the herd. A good example would be, in my experience, would be switching from health insurance to health sharing. Lots of people complain about how much they hate health insurance, and I understand. But then when you give them an alternative, all of a sudden they cling to what they already know. They cling to their established behavior. They cling to what the crowd is doing, and they simply cannot switch over to something different, even though they can clearly see the benefits. They can clearly see it's going to save them money. They can clearly see they're probably going to get better relationships with their doctors and they're going to get better health care, but they simply cannot get over that mental hurdle. And I see a lot of that. It's the same thing with the infinite banking concept. There is a mental hurdle you have to get over where you're going to be doing something that is different from what your average person is doing. And if you start talking about it with your friends, family, neighbors, they might get very angry and call you all kinds of names. They might lecture you about how this is a scam and how you shouldn't be doing it and how you're an idiot and all sorts of horrible things. So it's understandable, although not excusable, as to why people simply find it so difficult to go against the crowd. So as we go through the process, we'll look at every component of your financial life. So we take a comprehensive view. And I'm not an expert in everything, but I do have partners who are. So that's how I can offer a comprehensive approach because I'm not an expert in everything. I cannot do everything, but I have partners who do. And the most important thing about those partners is they coordinate with me. They don't operate in a vacuum and they are believers in, or at least okay with the infinite banking concept, which is really the core strategy to everything we're doing, that we're going to finance everything. We are going to become our own bankers. And now financing is half of every transaction. And so that becomes the anchor on which everything depends. So when we look at life insurance, I'm going to tell you as an example what your human life value is. A lot of people don't know this. In fact, almost nobody knows this. How much insurance, how much life insurance, how much death benefit is appropriate for your situation? Whether we get term or whole life or whatever, that's secondary. The first question is, what is your human life value? And one of the most valuable things I do is I educate people on what their human life value is and how it's calculated and why that's important. Then we also look at health insurance, or how are you paying for health care? There are an increasing number of people who have no health insurance or health sharing. They're just going to pay cash if anything happens, which is not as irresponsible as you might think. There are actually people who thought through it and came to the conclusion that that was the most cost effective option for them and for their family. Because when you join, say, a health sharing community, which could be a good thing to do over health insurance, you are effectively presenting as a cash pay patient. And there are a lot of advantages to that. But we'll take a look at your current health insurance, whether it's something you own individually or whether it's through an employer. And we'll take a look at optimizing it, or at least helping you understand what you have, because who really understands health insurance? Not too many people. And if you're going to have a health insurance policy, even if we change nothing about it, you can bring me on as your agent. So you'll be paying the same premium, having the same policy when you sign up for it. But now you have an agent that you can actually contact and speak to help you navigate this, to help you file claims and things like that. And of course, Brad Owens is my partner here. I don't claim to be an expert in health insurance, but Brad is, and he's who I would bring in. Crowd Health is, of course, another option that people are not aware of. Again, it's not just looking at what you have, helping educate you on what you have and how you can better make use of it, but also educating you on alternatives that you may not be aware of and that may or may not make sense for you. Helping people set up a health savings account. If they have a high deductible plan, they may not have set up a health savings account, things like that. Estate planning, home and auto insurance, liability insurance, long term care insurance. There's critical illness insurance, others as well. And then this is all before we even get to more advanced topics like the infinite banking concept, like potentially a whole life insurance, which can have multiple use cases. It can be a great savings vehicle. It doesn't have to be infinite banking. There could be multiple different ways of utilizing whole life insurance. And usually we're going to start off with just a convertible term life insurance policy to get you fully insured for your full human life value. And then we can determine if and when converting some of that to a whole life insurance policy might be appropriate, whether you want to use that to become your own banker, whether you want to simply use that as a savings vehicle or for permanent death benefit for legacy protection. Maybe if you're a higher net worth person, we can use it for estate tax issues or for estate planning in general. But again, the key is we are going to coordinate all of these things across the board. when we look at investments. I am not securities licensed, but I have partners who are. And I'll just add parenthetically, when I say investments, I'm using that word more generally in this context. There are lots of things that qualify as investments that are not securities. So when most people are talking about investments, they may be talking about mutual funds, stocks, bonds, index funds, things like that. But there's a whole host of other investments out there. If you want to truly become wealthy, my number one piece of advice to you would be start a business. That's an investment. What about investing in real estate? That's also an investment. College education could be viewed as an investment. Any sort of specialized training that you get could be an investment. Invest in yourself, as they say. So I'm using that word investment broadly. But then if there are retirement accounts, mutual funds, things like that that you have, I have securities licensed partners who will look at that. Because one of the most common questions that I get asked is, Logan, I have this money in a retirement account and now I'm not so sure I want it there. As I learn more, I'm more skeptical of whether I actually want my money in a retirement account, whether I actually want to be hitching my financial wagon to the S&P 500 train, which I cannot control. Is there something I can do? And that's where I would bring in someone who's securities licensed to look at that. And yes, there are different strategies we can use to strategically reposition money in retirement accounts into, as an example, whole life insurance. It wouldn't have to be that, but that's usually the most natural move because it can accomplish similar things. But it depends on a lot of different factors, of course, most of all you and what you're trying to accomplish. And we could also look at a fixed indexed annuity as well. Fixed index annuity could be a good move and could be done inside of a retirement account. But these are many of the ways in which we can help our clients to save money. I pride myself on giving you concrete, actionable items on day one. So we look at your situation and hopefully we can find ways to optimize it right off the bat, make a couple of moves that can save you a lot of money right up front before we put any insurance policies in force or anything like that. But at least some of that depends on your willingness to share your current situation with me, share documents, stay organized with that, and then be willing to actually do the work to make a move. So if we want to switch your home and auto insurance, then that's going to require some effort on your part to actually go and make that move. But these are some of the ways in which we can help you in our initial consultation before we even get to whole life insurance or other longer term, perhaps more sophisticated strategies. Hope this was helpful. Talk soon.